Welcome back. Last week, we brought you my exclusive interview with the chief security officer of Chinese telecom provider Huawei, Andy Purdy. Now, Huawei is suing the U.S. government, challenging the United States' decision to bar the government from using the Chinese telecom company's equipment. This as Huawei is in big legal trouble itself over intellectual property theft allegations. Here's what Andy Purdy had to say in response to those allegations last week right here.
On the theft of intellectual property by the China government, that's not us. The China government does not speak for us. We don't speak through the China government. I applaud the efforts of the United States and others to try to crack down on the global theft of intellectual property, which has been a disgrace over the last 15 years that we haven't done enough about it. So I'm glad to see President Trump is raising that as an important issue in the trade talks.
And joining me right now, a veteran in the technology world, the former chief operating officer at Microsoft, managing director of the Herbold Group, Bob Herbold. And Bob, it is good to have you on the program this weekend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Maria.
So you just heard Andy Purdy there defending Huawei. But, you know, I had to go on with the interview and list at least 5 or 10 companies that have already sued Huawei and they settled lawsuits with, including T-Mobile, Cisco, Motorola Solutions, Microsoft. I mean, these have all been issues. And I know you were at Microsoft as COO when Steve Ballmer was the CEO. Steve Ballmer joined me a couple of months ago and said to me that China has been stealing IP theft from Microsoft, that 90% of the companies in China use the Microsoft operating system, but only 1% pay for it. And he said it costs Microsoft $10 billion a year. What can you tell us about your experience with Huawei and China in particular?
Well, Steve Ballmer is right. I mean, he would moan and groan all the time, Maria, in regard to the problem we had in China because he was responsible for the sales arm of the company and was hurting badly. And the issue over the long haul is almost cultural when it comes to China. I mean, talk at the individual level. They don't really understand or operate in the mode that we do, where I think the general public and individuals who are trained in this country understand intellectual property and the need to protect it. And that simply is not understood at an individual level and at a government level at this point. But they're beginning to realize that it is a major problem. And when companies like Huawei become very successful because they have outstanding products, these issues really come to the front, which they are doing now. And that's a healthy thing. So I'm hopeful that they'll get the message, but I think it will take a long time. It has taken a long time.
Yeah, and even Canada is pushing back on Huawei. The Canadian foreign minister said, "We do not believe there is any scientific basis for this. We are concerned by the blocked shipments because China blocked some Richardson canola shipments to Canada." She says, "We do not believe there is any scientific basis for this." She told reporters saying that the matter was of the utmost priority for Ottawa. The point is, Bob, is that you've got a number of countries pushing back on using China telecom. I had Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in the studio a couple of weeks ago, and he said if European countries use a Huawei telecom infrastructure, the U.S. will not share as much information with those countries as they have in the past. Tell us about Huawei and why there's so much worry around espionage.
Well, the core problem here is that Huawei has developed some sensational products. And recently, Britain did a massive study on whether or not you really can find a backdoor in those products. And they came out. This is the National Cybersecurity Center that they have over there. And so many of the big carriers in Europe are saying, yeah, we want to use those products because they're the best products. They typically are at a lower price. But on the other hand, you've got governments beginning to realize that the bigger picture here is that it's hurting industry and hurting innovation globally because one of the players, namely China, is not respecting intellectual property. So they can copy things all they want. But when you copy something, if in fact part of what you've copied is protected by a patent, you owe some royalties. And China has traditionally turned their back at that, and that has to change. And I think government pressure will be a factor here that hopefully opens their eyes.
Yeah, I mean, we heard news this weekend that basically a deal, the Wall Street Journal reported that a deal is hardly imminent between the U.S. and China. And we are speculating that one of the reasons that we're not doing a deal and that meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping has not been officially set for the end of March in Mar-a-Lago, as was expected, was because China is pushing back on these issues. IP theft, espionage. It's not just IP theft, it's espionage. I mean, because when you look at a company like Huawei, you've got communist people from the Communist Party on the board of directors. So does that mean that basically China is using Huawei and ZTE as their spying vehicles into other countries' trade secrets?
That's exactly the issue. We don't know. We worry about it, given what has gone on in the past. The tough part here is that they are really accumulating the talent. A lot of our best students in the STEM areas at the master's and PhD level are in fact going back home, so to speak, and taking jobs at places like Huawei. So they're developing superior products, and that's really bringing the issue right to the forefront, which is good because this has to be put on the table. If that trade deal comes to completion and doesn't address this issue, boy, have we ever missed a bet as a country.
Well, I'll tell you, Bob, getting your insights in this important issue, given your background, your incredible resume, 3 books, all of your speeches on leadership, it's quite valuable for our audience. So we appreciate your time this weekend, Bob. Thanks so much.